Hey, everybody. This is Jack from the Soul Patch Podcast. I have a quick message for you before we start the show. If you're living and working in South Korea, or you just have a Korea related experience that you would like to share, please come on the show and be our guest. We'd love to have you. You can contact us at podcast@thesoulpatch.com. That's podcast@thesoulpatch.com. Send us an email. We'll have you on the show. It'll be a blast. Now it's time for the show. Welcome to the Soul Patch Podcast, the podcast where three American expats explore different topics related to living and working in South Korea. With a combined 45 years of living experience in Asia, there are plenty of stories to tell. So, pop in your headphones and make yourself comfortable. It's time for the Soul Patch Podcast.
My tainted perception distorts, my true meaning is blurred. I am lost to the echoes.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Soul Patch Podcast. Today we are talking to Maria. Maria is a hagwon owner here in South Korea. And as you know, we have talked to maybe 4 or 5 hagwon teachers over the past few months. But something that we really wanted to do here on the Soul Patch was to talk to a hagwon owner and get the other side, the perspective from the other side. And Maria was gracious enough to volunteer her time today to talk to us. And so, Maria, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you.
Morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So we were doing we were talking a little bit before I hit the record button. But Maria, your background is so interesting. Could you just give us like a really quick summary of like where you grew up?
Of course. So I was born in Korea, and then my parents immigrated to Brazil, and of course took me there. And then I grew up in Brazil. I mean, I usually say I was born in Korea, made in Brazil, because that's literally what happened.
Yeah.
And when I was in 4th grade, I don't know why, there was a boom into going to American schools. And my parents decided, oh, yeah, you're going to speak English. And then they put me into a prep school for 2 years. And then I went to an American school, and there I graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I graduated university at a Brazilian university. So I had to go to a prep school again because, you know, the subjects were in Portuguese. And then now I had to, in English, and then I have to do the test in Portuguese.
Sure.
And then after I graduated, I took about 15 days to get my things, and then I came back to Korea.
Oh, wow.
That must have been crazy coming back after. I mean, at that point, it's almost not even coming back necessarily.
Yeah.
It's going to
Right.
Korea.
It was, I was very curious because my parents are first generation Koreans, but they were, you know, they had stopped in the 80s, which was when we immigrated to Brazil. So I wanted to, and Korea was changing so quickly.
Oh, at that time,
I was really curious about, you know, what it was like to live here. And I came.
You probably
for 6
visited
months.
a couple of times, right? When you were growing up, you'd probably visited a couple of times.
I did. I
Yeah,
visited maybe within 10 times, but yeah, I did visit for vacation and everything. But it doesn't give you, it doesn't give you, I think, a good idea of what Korea is like, the culture. You don't get to meet people, especially because I was a minor. So I was coming to visit family, you know, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go, you know, backpack and, you know, just travel around Korea. I couldn't do that.
Did you have were there other Korean classmates in the international school? Was there like a community in Brazil?
There was. Actually, I had a couple of cousins who went to the same school. And then there were a few more Korean kyopos like myself at the school, but it was a very, very big mix. It was a very small school. We had like 20 to 25 students per grade because it's an international school.
So it was just like the United Nations in there, just
right. Yes. Yeah. And kids from all over the world, you know, parents who are coming for work or whatever, and they would,
Yeah. Well, that's what an exciting childhood, though. I mean, do you look back on it fondly now? Like you're
international.
Do you consider yourself lucky, you know?
Oh, I do. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I think when the experience in itself, I didn't have a choice. Like my parents said, we were going to Brazil. So I went. And then, you know, you're going to go to an American school. I did, you know. Looking back, yes, I was very lucky. The schools, even now, when I think of the prices then, it was, it was so expensive, and for my parents to, challenge themselves to put me through middle school and high school in an American school, and giving me the opportunity to be immersed in so many different cultures and languages. That was amazing.
Yeah.
But at the time, dude, it was hard. It was
Right.
traumatic.
You cannot appreciate it, I think, at that age. It's only looking back, you're like, wow, I really did have an exciting childhood. Because I say this to my daughter all the time, like, your life's amazing. Like I never left White Bear Lake, Minnesota until I was 22 years old or something. It's just like, I can't imagine your lifestyle, the life that you've lived already. But yeah, that's how's the Portuguese? Do you get to break it out every once in a while?
I mean, yeah, my brother still lives there. My nephews all speak mostly Portuguese, so whenever I go visit or I talk to them quite often. So yeah, I speak in Portuguese to them. Every time I go back, my friends are like, "Oh, you still speak Portuguese?" And I'm like, I spoke that for 20 years. If I forget, it's because I have amnesia. I don't know.
Yeah.
So then what brought you to Korea? Just you wanted to just hang out? Like, did you have a job lined up? Were you coming to school again, or it was just like, let's go back to the homeland?
I was in my 20s and I met this guy, right?
When
I was visiting Korea, and we had a 3-year long distance, and we never got to see each other. I was like, you know what? You keep promising you're gonna come, you never do. So there I'm going, and I literally came with 2 suitcases for maybe like 2 or 3 months because I had just graduated, and I was always curious about like visiting Korea and actually getting to know the culture. And then I don't know, I had no job lined up in Brazil either, and my major is psychology, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it.
Right.
And then I started to wonder. Actually, I think it's really funny because I started to wonder what it was like to work in Korea, because I'd heard so much about it, that, the stress of being in a Korean company, or, the abuses, or, the mental health not being cared for. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to see if I can get my master's here. And then I don't know. And 6 months turned into a year, and then 2. And I got my first.
I find that kind of amazing that you're thinking like, wow, the Korean jobs are all stress and work, and let's go check that out. That's really not what we go towards.
I think that was the psychology major in me, like being like, let's go explore this culture that explores their workers as a worker. And I got my first work at a hagwon. I worked there for about like 6 months, and I don't think I got a full grasp of what it was to like to work in a Korean company. But thinking back now,
a bit different in some ways from
it was, but also it was like 2005, 2006.
Okay.
So hagwons, I do think that there is a huge difference from then to now in many things. And it wasn't.
Was this an English hagwon, by the way?
It was an English hagwon. It was in Mokdong.
Oh,
and
that's where I lived. That was my first hagwon. I was teaching
really?
it near the very first Korean phrase I ever learned how to say was "목동 사거리 가주세요" for taxi, because I lived very near to 목동 사거리, and so
that's where my wife's mother lives there too. So we're all connected to Mokdong.
Mokdong, right?
I was there in 2007 actually, so not too long after you were working there.
Something that's really interesting to me is like Brazil is super chill and Korea is pretty uptight.
Not chill.
Not chill. I mean, was that like a culture shock to you? I mean,
Okay, so I'll tell you this. Working at a hagwon, right? And that hagwon was, I don't know, it was horrible. The owner was horrible. Everything, it was a horrible experience for me. Like that hagwon, I didn't know at the time because I didn't know what to expect. But thinking back, it was a horrible experience. He exploited me. But it was fine because by the end, I realized what was going on, and I just turned the tables, and but I think that overall, as a worker and being able to speak English gives me huge privileges that usually Korean people don't have. Sure. So I was allowed to be a lot more chill when it comes to making money. compared to, I think, any other Korean person or kyopo who has to go through the Korean way of life. So that was
sure.
So the culture shock came from other things, definitely, but I think not that much. And also, I never worked in Brazil because I came as soon as I graduated.
Sure,
so,
but you had a good idea of like what it looks like to actually, to work there. I'm sure.
Yeah, but you see, like my parents are Korean, so like and like I lived with my mom. My mom has a very, very strong work ethic. So like she would be the first. She would be the first one to get there and the last one to leave, like even in the street where she worked. So, I mean, I don't know.
It's hard to, even within the how can I explain this, like or say this, like the Korean diaspora is, the second generation children are so successful, at least in America, where the first generation just works like crazy to educate the kids, and then the kids end up, a lot of them go on to have very good careers, lawyers, doctors, and that's kind of part of the Korean ethos, I think.
Yeah,
is
I think especially for parents who moved between 60s, 70s, 80s, to other countries, not necessarily Brazil, they were post-war children who endured so much.
Right.
So the idea of being able to give more opportunities for their children was just so primarily important for them. There was no other thing, Like my mom, she says, like looking back, she's like, oh, I cannot believe I left my 6-year-old, my 3-year-old home by themselves to go to work, because there wasn't, babysitting, that wasn't a thing.
Right.
Right. I mean, you just left the kids believing they would not set your house on fire. That you would teach them how to get the food from the refrigerator, and then you would go to work, and then you would be back. And there weren't, like, I don't know, in Brazil, we didn't have hagwons until much later. So it was just like myself and my brother going to school, coming back, watching TV, because we
kind of like the latchkey kid sort of thing, right? You got your key like around your necklace, and to get into the house and that sort of thing.
I don't even think we locked the doors at the time, to be honest.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because I couldn't keep my umbrella, which was so much bigger. Like, how could what?
A key, like good luck.
6-year-old's gonna lose that.
6-year-old.
Yeah, it would disappear. So yeah, I don't think we even locked the door.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's
so,
and you said you were your boss exploited you at the hagwon. Like what? Could you give me like an example? Like, did he not like give you the like pay pension, and was it that sort of stuff?
Okay, so to start with, not just myself, but like a couple of friends I met along the way in the beginning of my first years here in Korea. I don't think I knew many teachers who had insurances at all. Like, even though they had a contract that said that they would get it, they didn't get it. But then also being a kyopo, I didn't get housing, or my pay was ridiculously low. I just didn't know at the time, and I think he knew I didn't know. And so my pay, I think at the time, it was like 1.5 million, 1.2 million,
and no housing,
without housing, without insurance. But also, so the contract was that like I would be working from 1 to 8. But the month that I went in was like vacation, right? So he's like, oh, for the first 2 months, it's vacation. So we expect you to be here from 9 to 8. And
during vacation, because it's vacation, you have to work more.
Yeah,
oh, wait, because vacation meaning the students are off.
It was school vacation for
not vacation for you, vacation for the kids, right?
Yeah, for the kids, yes. And and so he said it's 10 to 8 or something. So he got me working a lot more. And then the first month he gave me, I still remember, he gave me a bonus of 100,000 won, and he's like, oh, this is a way to thank you. And I didn't even think, oh, he needs to pay me overtime. Again, I had never had a real job. I had no idea of like, insurance or, anything like that. And then he gave me 100,000 for the first month. And then the second month, there was nothing. And I started to be like, okay, what's going on here? And then when I went back to my normal hours, he started to say that I needed to be in proper attire. He wanted me to be in like a suit because we were in Mokdong and the kids and the parents there, they're also fancy. Like,
Right.
at the interview for the job, I remember him opening the window to from his, you know, or hagwon, and be like, do you see all of these apartments? And I'm like, yeah, they all look the same because it's so different from Brazil. And he's like, do you know how much those are worth? And I was like, I don't even know how. I know. And he's like, yeah, each one of these little apartments are like ishibog or samshibog. And I didn't know what ishibog was at the time, or how much that meant in, dollars or in reais. And I was like, oh, okay. Is that expensive? So yeah. It was horrible. But and he wasn't a very nice person.
Yeah, he was taking advantage of maybe your naivete. And
definitely.
Yeah.
And then
I think that is going to definitely give you good experience in becoming hagwon teacher or owner later. What did you do after that, or how long were you at that specific job?
I'm sorry?
How long were you there at that one?
So I was there for about, I want to say about 4 to 6 months. I'm not very sure, because after the second to third month, he started to get, he got a secretary, and like I started talking to other people, and I started realizing, oh my God, there's something wrong with this hagwon. So I started to be like, okay, I don't think I can do 2 to 8, because at the time I was living in Incheon. So
wow.
Yeah, like
one heck of a commute.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea of anything about Korea, the subway system. I didn't know it was going to take so long. And so I told him, it's just too far. I want to quit. And he's like, oh, no. Like, what can I do to, have you stay a little longer? Because he didn't speak English that well. His wife, who was the other teacher, also did it. I was the only native speaker at the hagwon, so they couldn't afford to lose me. So I was like, I want shorter hours, and then I wanted shorter hours, and then I wanted shorter hours. So like I went from like 7 hours a day to 5 to 3, and then but still, he was just. I remember us moving from one building to another, and him being just such a jerk to the guys who were moving, and I'm like, I don't think I can work with a person like this. So I ended up quitting. It was just,
he was probably upset because he knew that he was taking advantage of you, and you were starting to figure it out, and then all of a sudden his great deal wasn't as good as it was before. So how many years did you do the hagwon thing, like as a teacher, before you opened up your own school?
I did that, and then I moved to Anyang, and I worked at hagwon. I think I worked at another 2. Yeah, I worked at another 2 hagwons. There were 2 like major chain hagwons. I don't remember the names anymore because
oh sure.
Oh God, I'm so old. That has been so long ago. But there were 2 major hagwons. But I went in as like a native speaking. 3, 4. I don't. Yeah, but I think I did another like 2, 3 years. 3, 4, 2, 3. Because I also worked with like companies. I did tutoring. I taught for a long time, but I think hagwon experience was about like 2 or 3 years.
Oh, okay. So that was your
bouncing around all other kinds of stuff as well.
I'm sorry.
Bouncing around all other kinds of things as well. Still teaching, still education, but
yeah, the hours at the hagwons kind of allowed me to get like gigs at other companies. They want like lunch hours or before work hours, so like I would go there too. I did some tutoring, but I never got as a teacher. I never ever got any insurance or housing. I was never offered.
Oh really? Okay.
Never.
So you were always like a freelancer almost in a way.
Although I did work like at the hours of an NET, they considered me like a freelancer, self-employed kind of thing because I was a kyopo. I think the idea of kyopos getting housing and everything else offered insurance, it came a lot later. When they started to there was a bigger demand for foreign teachers in Korea. or NETs at the least, and Korea closed the doors to giving E2s out for, and they started putting like, oh, you need a degree, you need this, and so it became more expensive to bring in NETs, and then they started to like consider kyopos as NETs for real.
Right.
I'm curious, when you were first coming here, what passport were you using? Were you using your Korean passport?
I've always had a Korean passport. So I'm a permanent resident in Brazil.
Okay. You don't have a Brazilian passport. Okay.
Yeah.
Because the first hagwon that I was teaching, my first friend there, he was gyopo as well, but he was like American gyopo, like born in America, and so he was more American, even legally than Korean was, and so
he would have been considered American, not as much like I was considered Korean.
Right.
You're like a unicorn for them. You know what I mean? It's like someone who's totally fluent, acculturated in American culture, but you carry the Korean passport, which means they can basically discriminate when it comes to, what they have to offer in benefits. And
not just that, but I thinking back now, I was doing both the jobs of NETs and Korean teachers. So like I would do parent 상담s at
parent conferences.
They would have me call the parents, and see blah 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 blah, and I would go into the classes, and they wanted me to check homework, and like the things that Korean teachers would do and NETs wouldn't do. They would have, so they were trying to get me to do both sides and pay me for what they were paying their Korean teachers.
Right. Well, let's see. Which one are we going to pay you? The low one or the high one? Okay. Yeah.
Let's go with the low one.
Let's go with the low one. Yeah. And I'm sure you're doing translation duty all the time, translating.
It was so bad. But again, I didn't have any point of reference because like the kyopos who were here that I knew were like, your friend actually, like they were Americans, like legally Americans.
Right.
So they were treated like Americans, and there weren't Korean passport holding kyopos or F2, F6, F3, like F visas weren't that much of a thing at the time. So yeah, it was bad.
trial by fire. Yeah. So how would you it doesn't sound like you were floundering at this time. It just sounds like you were just figuring things out a little bit. How many years before you felt like said, you know what, I'm not going to be a pawn in the system. I want to be more in control of my own destiny. How long did it take you before you kind of figured out like, okay, this is the system. This is how it works. I think I can make this work to my benefit.
Right. So I stopped working at hagwons because I decided that I wanted to do my master's here in Korea. I wanted to check out the psychology environment here, which I didn't like either, but for a whole lot of different reason. And then I went back to tutoring, working for companies because I didn't want to work at hagwons anymore. I just felt like they didn't appreciate me. And I went to Yangpyeong, lived there for 5 years. We had a bar and it was so much fun. And I quit working as a teacher for a while because we had a bar, we had a restaurant, and it started going crazy. But it was my first time doing a business.
Yeah.
And I thought it was fun, like running a business. And, my husband and I, like we work together quite well. And I started missing teaching. And so when we decided to move here in Sachon, we talked about what was our next step. And I was like, I think I really want to go back to teaching. I still struggle with thinking hagwon or the teaching business as a business. This is something that I still struggle with. I don't know how to deal with being a teacher and being the person who I like to be, which is caring for the bringing of the kids and education and just making decent human beings who can also speak English, you know what I mean?
Right.
And running this as a business because it is. But yeah,
sure.
I've been doing this for 5 years now, 2 of them being Corona years.
Oh, wow. You survived. Congratulations.
I'm very grateful.
Right. Yeah.
I think we had some amazing teachers who supported us. The parents were super amazing. The kids were amazing because they refused to go to other hagwons. So
Yes.
It was, yeah, it was hard, but
well, that's a testament to your, how you run your business, like your authenticity. And I mean, like you were saying before, you could run it not like a business, but that's really dangerous too, because you can't survive on hugs. You know what I mean? Like you have to there
definitely.
it is a business at its core. But I think there's a balance where you can still do it ethically, where it's not just all about the money, and the quality of education can still be maintained. And
Right.
how did you find that balance? Like, what's
I
the
still
secret sauce?
I don't think I don't think I have it yet.
Hmm.
This is something that my husband and I have been discussing for the past 5 years, which is how much do we charge? Like our classes tend to be longer than any other hagwon around here,
Hmm.
and that brings the price tag up already because it's longer. And then we are in the countryside, so we understand that not all parents can pay,
Hmm.
but I do believe we offer a good educational service for the kids, not just in the English teaching department, but overall. Like I do like to have a hagwon who teaches kids to be, autonomous, who teaches kids to love English. I mean, of course, I believe a lot of hagwon owners do, especially the small hagwons. I don't know the chain hagwons, but the small hagwons, I do know that
Sure.
a lot of the owners, that's what they want. They want to help raise decent children who can speak English,
Hmm.
but we also need to pay bills. And I think one of the big things, we want to be able to give decent salaries, not only to the teachers, but to the drivers or to whoever was working with us, because they are the pillars of what we're doing here. I
Right.
can't teach 5 classes at once, 10 classes at once. I can only be me. And as the hagwon grows, which is what you are looking for when you do a hagwon, that those are the people that you are trusting are taking care of the children like you would. So we
Mhm.
want to be able to treat them right, but MOE puts a cap on us, parents put a cap on us, and then life, also puts a cap on us. So
Right.
I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. I think, yeah, it's thus we're still poor. We have fun, but we're still poor. We're still tired.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting to hear, because it always seems that like the hagwon owners are doing so well because they're raking in the money, with all of this. And I mean, maybe this is different from a hagwon, outside of Seoul compared to one in Gangnam or something like that. But it always seems that the pay to fee ratio is in the hagwon's favor considerably, and you're talking about trying to keep it very fair, which definitely, as Jack was saying, makes sense for why you were able to retain teachers and students and things over the pandemic time.
Yeah. And also it is very it's not necessarily like Korean people are not necessarily going to always go with the cheapest price too, because they do understand you get what you pay for. I feel like that's something that is understood here. I feel like maybe in the States, and maybe I'm being too harsh on America, but it's like, bottom basement prices, but
Top quality.
right.
Well,
You're going to
I
get a
think for
lot of
education that
turnover.
might be a bit different, Jack, because like when what you want to pay money for what your kids are getting more than buying like shoes or something.
Yeah,
like that.
you're right. Yeah, that's true. I guess it's not all. I was thinking commodities in general, but
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like there are sometimes in some areas of Seoul or whatever, a race to the bottom among hagwons. It's like we're gonna cut and cut and cut and cut just so we can undercut these other hagwons and be the cheapest in the neighborhood. But I think ultimately it kind of leads to the demise of the hagwon, because also you're cutting quality. And like you said, happy drivers, happy teachers, you're going to get better lessons out of those people, And
Speaking of lessons, actually, I'd like to move to that. I'm kind of curious. You kept mentioning NETs, and I'm pretty sure I did the math that means native English teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we're not in the
I thought it
hagwon
was an
fields.
NFT. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
No,
Sorry.
no problem. I was like NET. No, right, got it. So, the teachers that you hire, are they all NETs? Are they all native English teachers, or do you have some like non-natives as well? How many teachers do you have actually? I
So
guess
right
question.
now I'm working with two because our
Okay, so you're
hagwon
still quite
is
small.
very small. Yeah.
Cool.
I teach, and then I have two more teachers. One teacher is Korean and one teacher is American, and then myself.
Yeah. How did you find your, I guess for the Korean teacher, there's many ways to find Korean people to find for work. How did you find your foreign teacher? Did you post on like Dave's ESL, or did you use a
Oh yeah, that's a
recruiter,
good
or
question.
Facebook groups, and then I also go
Cool.
into WorkNet, which is like page that for people who are looking for jobs and people who are looking for people who are looking for jobs. I mean, I post, so looking for teachers is something that gives me a lot of anxiety.
No doubt. How do you find someone that you know is going to be a good worker, but also a match for you, right?
Right.
We've talked to a lot of teachers before, and from their perspective, it's how do you find a match of a hagwon that matches you? But you're doing it the other way, of course. Someone that is going to match your teaching
It gives me
style.
so much anxiety.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very unfair that Korea has this. I mean, I do like the idea that Korea is looking for people who are graduated, from university. I think it is
Right.
important, because when I came here, it was not a requirement. Like, I remember people who did not have university degrees, who are high school, graduates who were working. There might have been the law, but it wasn't something that they were
Right.
checking on.
Oh, they were able to
mean?
skirt the law.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't appreciate that you have only 7 countries that are considered to be able to come and teach English, because it's very sad, because whenever I post a job, there are people from several places with whom I, email back and forth, and I can tell they have perfect English, but still I cannot hire them. And they would love to come to Korea to work, but they can't, because the Korean law doesn't allow you. But yeah,
I mean, even if you were a Brazilian citizen, even had you gone through, the entire education system in American schools, you would not be able to have taught here.
The only reason why I could work here was because I had a Korean passport, because otherwise, like, by now I could not. But looking for a good fit for us is really, really hard, because like I said before, I do think that teachers, I need to be able to trust that the teacher is going to be what I need them to be, at the very least, And
what do you? So sorry to interrupt you. Do you want them to be malleable, like someone that you can kind of shape and work with, or do you see a quality in them that is kind of innate? And it's like, oh, you're a good fit based on your personality. I mean, because I feel like teaching is more of an art form than a science. You know what I mean? Like it's and my style is totally different than Kevin's, and it doesn't mean that one person's a good teacher and the other person's a bad teacher.
Right.
It's just like, maybe the worst case scenarios where one teacher is trying to be somebody else, and it's not in there.
It's not a good fit, right?
Right.
So I think so our hagwon is very, very activity based, right? We don't do writing, reading on the table a lot, because this is not what I believe. I think there are many, many different methods of learning a language. The method that I chose was to have kids playing and making a mess and everything. So I think for us, like, the energy of the teacher, number one. I think the method and how the teacher decides to carry on the curriculum is not as important as, are you a person who I can trust that will take care of the kids and who will care for the kids and for their well-being? And do you agree on the conversations? Do you agree that kids need to have autonomy, or that the kids need to grow as human beings before they learn how to say, hi, teacher, how are you? They need to have that connection with the teacher. And it's a hit and miss. I'll tell you that. Like, we'll get the curriculum, we'll do the interview, we'll try to talk, and I'll try to make as clear as possible as what we do as a hagwon. but I think sometimes the teacher think, again, like you said, some teachers will think, oh, this is what she's saying. And then they come and they're like overwhelmed, or they can be, oh my God, this is too much. So what I've been figuring is that like first time teachers are always harder to work when, in my case, like if you are a teacher who will have the kids like, open their books and speak based on the book and things like that, it might be a little bit easier if you're a first timer and building your experience. But for us, like the teacher, at least 1 or 2 years working with children, but just overall, that helps a lot. So
What
yeah,
age are you teaching at your hagwon?
I'm sorry.
What age are you?
We have kids from 5-year-olds to 6th grade.
Okay, right.
5 years.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing, because teaching kids at really young ages is less. Sometimes it's less teaching and it's more just playing and it's experience.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yes.
And so yeah, you definitely have to understand how to work with kids. It's something I'm not very good at, honestly.
So,
once it becomes more teaching, I'm better.
Yeah, this is something that I'm figuring, that
harder.
because of our broad range of age for the kids, and like
Right.
myself, I love working with all ranges because I think it gives me like something new to do a little bit every day. But I'm figuring that finding the right specific teacher for specific ages also makes a huge difference. So like one of our teachers right now, like she works with kindergartners for a long time, and I'm realizing she really, really loves to work with the younger kids, like to see them like develop as mini human beings and coming in with zero English and then just developing into little kids who would be like, hi teacher, thank you teacher, So like I'm being more prone to putting her with younger kids, if that's what she would prefer, because I think she is really happier there.
Right.
The interesting
that's something
thing,
I've learned in some of my part-time jobs, because I work at the university, of course, but I do like summer camps and things with kids just for extra money. And I've been thrown in with some really young kids. I'm like, this does not work for me. But like mid to high elementary, I actually do quite well. Once the kids have like a basic amount of English and can start learning, and I still have fun with them, I still play, but I've just learned it's like, yeah, those really young kids, it's not for me.
Right.
My style.
Did you teaching philosophy? Your teaching philosophy seems highly influenced by your background in psychology, because the prevailing the prevailing wisdom in ESL literature is the nativist approach. Noam Chomsky, Stephen Krashen, and people like that who are, even John Dewey, like this idea of like creating an antecedent curriculum that everybody's going to do page 3 to 7 on a Monday and page 7 to 10 on Tuesday, and etc. It is much easier because it's kind of like paint by numbers, for a new teacher to come in and be like, did you finish page 10? I did. Oh, good job. But are the children actually learning anything? And so by taking this holistic approach to language learning, by having the teachers in the classroom use only English utterances and listening to the students' utterances and seeing as the improvement over time, parents are the hardest to convince that the nativist approach is actually the correct one, which I personally believe is. Do you spend a lot of time trying to convince them, like, just hang tight, it's working, but it takes time?
So I think not trying to convince them, because I think that, especially now, I think when we first opened, there was a lot of not convincing, but explaining what our philosophy was and what we were looking for. But by now, I think the parents who come here because they understand that this is what we do here. So the first thing I tell them is that this is not an academic academy. We're not aiming for tests. We don't have tests. We don't have homework. We don't have, monthly reports, because I think it doesn't have any meaning. Every month we're not going to see big changes on the kids. I do call them every 3 months or so just to see how the kid is doing. Is the kid still having fun? But I will say that every once in a while I'll do it's okay, mom. It's okay if you're not feeling it, because sometimes they get nervous, especially once the kids are, I think from kindergarten to elementary, they get nervous.
Yes.
And then from second grade, when they're on first, second, third grade, when they're moving up to the 고학년, they get nervous. And then 고학년 to middle school is another time when they get nervous. So they start, is the kid going to be ready for tests? Is the kid going to be ready for the English that they're going to be learning at school? Right. Or, so we do have like hour-long conversations about just like letting them know what's happening, and it's okay to go a little bit slower because this is a language, this is a culture. We're not
Right.
teaching just how to memorize 1 + 1 is 2.
And their grammar understanding is intuitive. It sounds like it's not, you're not doing a prescriptive grammar. You're not, so I could see how like, well, Mr. Kim's son can write his name, Mr. Kim's son can spell blah, blah, blah. Like a spelling test is some sort of indicator of language ability and intelligence, which I think we know is not, memorizing isolated word lists and memorize, through rote memorization is not actually, it's more of a, you can also teach a bear to ride a bicycle too. I mean, but
I think there are two sides to it, because if I were a hagwon preparing the kids for the test, that would be something that you have to do because that's what the schools are looking for, or that's what Sunong is looking for,
Exactly.
They want you to memorize words and to know the meaning in Korean and do that crisscross. It doesn't mean that you're speaking English, but it means that you know the meaning of that word in Korean.
Right.
So I think, but I think the parents by now, they do understand. That's not what we're aiming for. They do ask me though, like, oh, should I have the kid, memorize so many words? And I asked them back. So what is it that you want from that? Do you want him to know so many words so that he can do well at tests? Then why not?
Yeah, buy him a dictionary, start with A, aardvark, and finish with, zoo or something.
Right.
Right, yeah.
So if that's what you're going for, yes. If the reason why you're doing this is because you want them to speak English, I would say no, because it's going to be traumatic. It's going to make them hate English because they are memorizing words that have no meaning. Right. We do study grammar, but we go very, very, very slowly because they're not native speakers. A lot of my oldest students, they have been here for 3 to 4 years. So now we have conversations in English. So now when I correct their grammar very slowly, they understand why it's wrong. But before that, what am I going to do teaching them grammar? They don't speak English. Right. Why are they learning grammar? Right. They don't understand what they're learning.
And Maria, I'm so sorry. I can talk about the ESL theory and pedagogy forever, and I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to sidetrack you so much into that. I do love the way
part of it for sure.
Yeah, it's I think it's a fantastic way to organize the school. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't ask a couple of questions related to just like behind the scenes. So when it comes to, you kind of gave us a little bit of information about the hiring process, and you said it gives you anxiety, but you do a pretty strong vetting process until you find that right personality. How about what are some of the like challenges of just running a hagwon? Because I've heard some like nightmare stories where there's a lot of competition between other hagwons in the neighborhood. I've even heard, I don't know if this is apocryphal or if this is actually true, but even calling like the local office to investigate your hagwon because your Microsoft Word is pirated instead of you know what I mean, like that sort of stuff. Have you had any experiences like that? And please don't you don't have to share if you feel like it's uncomfortable or
and no names.
Yeah, we're not trying to libel anybody or anything like that.
One of the reasons, so our hagwon is in a very remote area of Gyeongsangnam-do. So we are literally the only, I want to say we are the only hagwon who does things the way we do. So we have kids driving from a 40-kilometer distance to come to the hagwon because the parents believe that we are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So we're not huge, and there is a limit to how many students I can take. But the parents who trust us and believe in us, they'll come a long way to be here. So the competition is not, which is the reason why I didn't go to Seoul or to Anyang or to bigger cities, because I didn't want that stress added to the stress of running a hagwon. So I chose.
It gets really stressful too. I mean,
I can only imagine, because just teaching at the hagwons, the directors will already be like, look at that hagwon, look at that. We have some, So I didn't want that. I just wanted to do the thing that I believe in, and that was what I was looking for. So yeah, for me, the biggest and the hardest thing is teachers. Like, not that the teachers give me stress. It's not that. Is like,
is it the
being able to find the teacher who will be right for our business, and for whom we will be right, because our system doesn't work for all teachers. Not all teachers like to have an open-ended curriculum where they can come up with, creative ideas. So that is something that I try to make clear, like that our teachers need to love to create or to play or to, come up with some new ideas for the kids, because not everybody likes to do that, and it does take energy if you're not.
Yeah. And if they're not totally sold on the idea, then it's going to be a bad fit, because you're going to be butting heads essentially the whole time.
Right. So like they have
the
to like
foreign teachers that you've worked with, the foreign teachers that you had, have they been in Korea already, or did you bring them from abroad?
No, they were teachers in Korea already. Okay. And
so they were used to the culture at least a little bit.
Yeah. I think so that is something another thing that I've been figuring out. I think that our hagwon is a good fit for teachers who have been in Korea for at least a year, who have been in the ESL business for at least a year, just because I think, when you move to a new city, that's already a lot of
you might need a little bit of structure in the beginning just to get your footing.
Yeah, I think
you might need to play a little hangman just to
I think you need to have like a little structure, and that the page 10 to 12 from week 1 and week 2, this is what we want, because a lot of this is what I've been noticing. I interview with a lot of teachers who are newcomers, or who and they have to, it's not optional. They have to spend so much energy understanding the culture, understanding the environment where they're in, and understanding the children, that it's hard to be creative. It is, it's hard.
It's exhausting already. Yeah.
If you love children, even if you love, playing and creating and arts and everything, it just takes too much energy. So like lately I have learned I need to find teachers who have a little bit of experience, and teachers who have been in Korea for a little bit, which becomes a big struggle for me, because our teaching time is 4 hours a day.
Oh, wow. That's very reasonable. Yeah.
And my teachers, I give them 30 minutes in the front and in the back, because I think, I would like them to be here 30 minutes before. They can
a little bit of prep time and
just get settled in your classroom, and then after you leave, if you have to, organize your classroom a little bit. Each teacher has a classroom. So, if you want to get your things together, but they need to be here 4 hours a day, which is so much shorter than any other hagwon.
We're going to get so many emails, Maria, like, hey, can you give me Maria's email address?
Which is so, but that's the thing. Because of that, it's very hard for me to offer what big chain hagwons who,
Sure.
I can't. It's hard because our working hours are so short. That means that I'm not making as much as a chain hagwon who's running 8 hours a day, with 6 hour, 7 hour teacher classes, and
8 teachers, and just.
So I think I just recently posted because we're in the process of looking for a teacher, and I got so much. There were some replies, and I can't get over one, which was like, "Oh, that's slave labor," and it just hit me so hard, because that is not what I was going for. And like, I think I do think that we do offer a fair pay. I wish we could do more, and my hopes are that we can eventually. And especially, when I interview teachers, I tell them I look for teachers who want to be long-term, because that would give me a chance to eventually get to the pay that they think is more appropriate, I guess, for them, and that I feel that teacher deserves, but I need time to understand that this teacher is worth that much money, much more than other teachers are getting, because I trust that they can do the job.
Sure.
That also might just be, I mean, it's difficult for foreign teachers because, like, even if you're offering decent pay per hour for that few hours, it's just going to be not a lot total. And like foreign teachers are, I mean, technically it's illegal to have other work here, like you're only working at the hagwon, that's your only income.
Not necessarily. I think it's not illegal. I think you can negotiate with the hagwon. It's not, the law doesn't, I think
maybe it's changed then.
So when I checked with immigration, the only thing that you have to do is to make sure that they're being paid the minimum wage for 8 hours a day worth of work, right?
Oh, okay.
Because they want to ensure that they're making at least enough to make a living, which I think is fair enough. Then if they do want, like, for example, I want to get an online teaching job, or I want to do I want to work with editing, or I want to, they're able to. I think for people who get here through GEPIC, for example, who are teaching at public schools, they cannot, because by contract they're not allowed to. Right. But
so it's kind of up to the people sponsoring their visa, which would be you.
Right. Yes.
Do you offer like a housing to the teachers?
I do not, because again, the hours are so short. But there is a full understanding that the deposit money can be a big issue, because it's
deposits are big here.
We do try to negotiate as much as possible so that they're comfortable, so we can pay the deposit for them, or we can make it, if they want to have it in their name, we can do it in installments that are comfortable for them. Like we'll try to figure a way, like housing wise.
And I'm not trying to catch you in I
do understand, and those are questions that I think it's very important.
How do you how about medical insurance and and pension and stuff like that? Is that so is that because in my experience we've run across some teachers who, according to their, and these were unscrupulous owners that were like taking the money out of the paycheck but never actually putting it into the pension.
Those are the horror stories.
Those are in our like hagwon horror stories. And I just wonder if those situations, like, do the rules become so burdensome that is it really hard to stay afloat sometimes? Like, is that something that is like the laws are they too? I'm not sure how to articulate this. I'm just wondering if it's like, is there always like a struggle in that regard, or is that something that you just kind of, it's a necessity and I just check it off the list? It's like we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to do the insurance, we have to do the pension, all these things.
I think insurance wise, it's a law. You have to. And I think that if you're working at a hagwon who's not doing it, sue them. Like call the labor, the Ministry of Labor, have them, go after them, because it's your right. I don't think it's okay not to pay. I don't think it's okay.
And I wasn't intimating.
Oh no, I know. But like as what I'm saying is like, as a hagwon owner, it's not fair, because it is a big chunk. Like when you think, let's say an average teacher, first timer who's coming to Korea, they get anything between like 2.5, 2.8. It is an extra 200,000 that you're putting in your budget, because, so as a hagwon owner, it's unfair that I'm paying and other hagwon owners are not, because it's a law. You have to do it. Yes. And you as a worker, it's your right. So if they're not giving it to you, and I am adamant on this because that's how I was treated. Like I never got insurance ever
Right.
on the time that I worked.
And I think I also had I had a similar experience. I'm not sure. This is like 20 years ago, but I went to check my pension and it's like, so I wonder how much is in there. Oh, zero. Okay. I must have been a part-time worker or something like that.
Right.
Like it was.
So I would say
yeah.
check, definitely. I think the NHS, they will send you a notification saying, you know, your insurance has not been paid for the past 3 months or 4 months.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think especially with COVID, it has happened to me too, you know, like during COVID, we closed for 5 months because of the nature of our classes. The kids they cook here, they play here. So it was really hard in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it was hard to pay any bills whatsoever.
Absolutely.
So my teachers were getting those notifications and I'd be like, I had to apologize because I had to choose between giving their paycheck and paying NHS. And I was like, look, I'm going to pay this. I will, but I would rather have you get your pay first and then sort out this which is a bigger organization. And I can take a little bit more time, you know?
Yeah. And that's a totally different scenario than just not ever paying it at all with no intention of doing it and just running your school.
That's running your business worse than I am. So maybe you should not be doing a hagwon.
I guess. And you're, you know, being upset at other hagwons that are doing that is totally justified because it's like you're doing it the right way. And it's so unfair. You have to compete with people who are skirting the law or you know, not doing it the right way.
And it saddens me to see like so many teachers have, including myself, you know, but even like today, having teachers who are having such horrible experiences with hagwons, because it does bring us down as well. I think this is one of the reasons why when I post a job, you know, I understand the pay is not as much, but I wish they would understand it's just because the working hours are so little. And if it's not fit to you, that's fine. I understand that a lot of, you know, native teachers are here for a shorter amount of time. They're, you know, and they need to, I understand that. But I think that a lot of it comes because so many hagwons are, you know, exploiting their workers. So there is an understanding, you know, among teachers that they're going to be exploited, you know, and that they're going to be, you know, they're saying 4 hours, but you're going to be there for 10 and they're paying just this and there's no housing and there's no this. And I can't justify myself because what am I going to do? You know, do a fight over Facebook with people who have never seen, you know? So I apologize if I'm offending. I'm just looking for someone who's looking for a job like this. If you're not, that's fine.
Exactly.
Nice.
Kevin, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I mean, since we're running on our time here, I wanted to ask something to kind of wrap up with, because most of the people that we've talked to, and I think most people listening, obviously there's a larger population of hagwon teachers than there are hagwon owners, just based on demographics.
Lately, I want to say barely. it's almost going 1-to-1.
Is there any, because you've been on the teacher side, you're now on the owner side, for people who are coming to Korea or maybe already in Korea who are teaching at hagwons, let's stick with the teaching. Is there something that you would like them to understand coming from the other side? Like what do you wish that teachers knew that the owners are dealing with or thinking about or whatever?
All right. So I cannot speak for big chain hagwons. I think that when a hagwon is very big and, you know, they have all the financial and personnel support, it might be a little bit different. But I think most of the hagwons in Korea are single person owned hagwons, and, you know, maybe with like 5-10 teachers or even less. They're run by decent people. Like I am part of like a hagwon owner association who gives support, who tries to give support to people who are opening businesses, or, you know, and I'm part of a Facebook group of hagwon owners as well. And we do have like discussions of, oh, you know, how do we keep hagwons decent? How do we keep a decent working environment for teachers, students, and, you know, everybody else. And a lot of us are not swimming in money. A lot of us are struggling, you know, paper-wise, it might seem like, oh my God, they're making so much money, but there are so many extra expenses that
Right.
it's not visible. And having that cap from the MOE, just even if I wanted to charge more, and then the competition as well, you need to keep your prices. So like I want to say I do. And I know that many hagwon owners who want decent teachers. And because even if you're a teacher who loves teaching, you're doing it for the money. And that is the truth.
It's a job.
It's a job.
And often it's transient because they're here for 2 or 3 years and then they go back to their home country.
So like, I think I would like them to understand that I think that for a lot of hagwon owners, for us, it's more than just a transient job. This is something that we love to do. Yeah. This is something that we believe in. And this is something that we want our children to thrive, and we want our teachers to thrive together. But I don't know. I just wish they could understand that there's so much more stress, and there's so much more we depend so much on them, and like having them go through like have that stigma of like hagwon owners being bad people is just so much harder, because even when we're trying to find, because like I said, I do think that especially for schools, what are we going to do without teachers? Like we need them to be decent people, and having them believe that we are not, it just doesn't build that mutual trust. And I think it is necessary for like both sides to change a little bit and to communicate more. I do know that like a lot of hagwon owners are trying to do that, and I do hope that a lot of them succeed in doing that, like building a strong relationship. I do wish that teachers here would understand that even though for them it's just coming and going, so it's just a cultural experience or a traveling experience where you can make money. For us, this is our life, like a lot of us are in this for life, and we, so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's.
No, I mean that absolutely makes sense, especially when you're talking about the small versus the big chain hagwons. And I think that's something that a lot of people just need to keep in mind as well, is that there's going to be a significant difference between those big ones and the small ones. And
I think so.
And with the small ones, and again, this is kind of a recurring joke with us. I mean, just life tip, remember that there's a person on the other side, right? You're dealing with another human being. And that human being is the main character in their life, and you're the main character in your life, but everyone is working on their own things together. When it's the big companies, I mean, those tend to be the easier to work with, but that's like corporation, that's different. So yeah, just remember the person, I guess, is a good general tip.
I think communication is very, very crucial. Yeah.
And the fact
that you're a major, so I agree.
another degree that has nothing to do with what you're doing right now, right? Just like
I teach communication.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's connected.
And the fact that you're on the ground level, working side by side, shoulder to shoulder with the other teachers is, I think, that really does help. I think, because it's kind of levels the playing field a little bit, and that idea of the two-dimensional mustache twisting, Monopoly man in the ivory tower looking down on the peons.
It's a caricature.
It's a total caricature.
Nice.
Maria, thank you so much for, your transparency and openness to actually provide a perspective that I think I've never heard before, to be honest. This is the first time, and the fact that you were so open and so honest with us, we really, really appreciate it. So thank you. So
good luck finding teachers.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah. It's my life struggle now, looking for teachers who can. I'll get there.
Well, hopefully, after listening to this podcast, maybe some people will gravitate towards your hagwon. I'm just going to say. You're welcome. It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure.
It was a pleasure. It was very fun, and I hope I didn't again offend anyone with what I think or it's just my side, and it's just very, very personal. I think everybody's different and believe in different things, but this is how I know how to. It's the only way I know. So
No, I wish there were more hagwon owners like you personally, because it just the stories that we hear, it's you have such an interesting perspective and philosophy.
In it
so
for the education as well.
Yeah, and you're obviously in it for the right reasons, and that's really refreshing and such a positive thing. Just to our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us today on the Soul Patch podcast. If you want to listen to the episode, you can go to our website, thesoulpatch.com. It's a one-stop shop where you can stream the episode. You can go to Apple Podcasts. You can download it. If you could leave us a positive review in Apple Podcasts, that would really help us out. If you want to, if you're more of a YouTube person and you want to listen to it on YouTube, I will be putting the audio up on YouTube, so you can listen to the podcast there. And if you have the funds, you can hit that Patreon button on our website and contribute to the show. It'll every little bit goes towards producing the show. And with that, we'll say goodbye. Maria, thank you again.
Yep,
Thank you.
it's been great.
We'll see you next week on the Patch. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good day.
Pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Nothing here.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
The quiet man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine. Jim.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
The brain.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Hey, Bobby.
Let the bass go.
Call me an eater, call me a dominant.